Hello and welcome to Journey into History, the Loki After Show from the Comic Crush. This is episode 2. I am Paul. I'm here with our very own Lady Loki. Liz here to cause mischief and just generally chaos throughout the episode, no doubt. Liz, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to see you again. Looking forward to an exciting show this week. I mean, well, moderately exciting, about as exciting as it gets for us. It was a good episode. Did you enjoy it? Of course
I did.
Why am I asking?
I know, really. Redundant question, Paul.
Yeah. I like to start with one or two redundant questions, Liz, just to ease you in gently. I got to say, you called it Lady Loki. You were definitely on the ball there.
Or was I?
What do you mean? You said, like,
well,
you
Paul,
said this would be Lady Loki, and in fact, didn't you even name the actress that would be playing that particular character?
That is true. But as we go along, I will dismantle that a little bit.
And, okay, great. No, I'm really excited now. Good. This sounds good. Straight away, we're kind of thrown into Loki working for the TVA. I really love those early scenes. Loki having to deal with, which is a thing, is a running theme of comics I find in the last few years, is what happens when comic characters have to deal with bureaucracy, real world bureaucracy and the things that slow the rest of us down. In a way, it humanizes them. I think it's always a good thing. It's good to see that in a lot of ways they react the same way that we do. They get frustrated and bored and annoyed. You can see a little of Loki's, I mean, we'll be almost beyond mischievous here into quite a viciousness, because he's trying to swat the little Miss Minutes thing. Once again, Tara Strong providing the voice. So I quite like that. Those early scenes were a lot of fun.
Yeah, like the scene we opened with at the Renaissance Fair in Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Now, it took me a minute or two to get over the fact that there is actually a place called Oshkosh, because you kind of think that England has the hold on towns with stupid names, or strange names, I should say, not stupid names. I'm sure they're all given those names for a reason. Also, Renaissance fairs, type of time travel in a way. Type of time travel.
And also, maybe even a comment on, like, the world of Thor.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sort of quasi out of time, semi Shakespearean sort of thing that there is about Thor and Asgard, and
because what Thor has is a quasi Shakespearean language, as you point out, but a medieval, a sort of semi-medieval kind of set of accoutrements and fetishes and things like that. So it's an interesting mix. And of course, there's even been that particularly vicious Thor miniseries Vikings that was incredibly violent. As I remember. I can't remember who the writer was on that, but it might have been Ennis.
I think it was
someone like
Ennis,
that.
Yeah.
It was someone who's known for a bit of violence. So that there is that mishmash, and of course, Nordic myths and things like that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. A complete kind of comment on that.
But then we have like this whole big fight scene set to the theme from Footloose.
Which is quite an odd one, considering that the character we're dealing with, Lady Loki, is not a hero in any conceivable way, shape, or form. Perhaps you're going to blow that theory out of the water later for us. But yeah, it's a great song, Bonnie Tyler. You cannot go wrong with a bit of Bonnie Tyler, really.
Right, and then we have this whole scene afterwards where Loki sort of. Now, what did you take from that? Did you take it to mean that he was lying, or that he was actually not lying?
I think he was. I think he was lying. I think he was absolutely looking to kind of give them the slip.
Because she was outside and taking that reset charge. You know, we see just after that, you know, communication between Loki and Mobius. But did he actually know that she'd be out there?
I think he did. I think Loki's thing of lying is to tell you the truth in a way. Do you not think it's to basically tell you a partial truth, but like dress it up and, you know, rig it around for his own purposes. Yeah, sure. And I kind of you kind of almost can't believe him because it's Loki, but you want to because you can see that he is a version of Loki undergoing change again, as we've seen in Ragnarok, but in a different form this time. I mean, I don't know. I took it that he was just
right, and Loki says after, when he's chasing Owen Wilson down the hall after that scene between Mobius and Ravonna Renslayer. You know, I was just messing with you. I'm teaching you about Loki and, you know, to expect the expected, which is that I'm gonna lie, and that I'm gonna try and trick you.
Yeah, I think it was typical kind of classic movie Loki, you know. I'm trying to think if there are instances. I was in the middle of watching Thor the other day, and I want to try and watch all the kind of Loki, the main Loki kind of appearances, because I wonder if you go through the series, is there any point where he outright lies, or does he actually tell the truth? You know, I'd be interested to see what the dichotomy is and where that goes. I mean, obviously, I mean, he does. Like Ragnarok, he lies.
I mean, he bluntly lies to Thor when he tells him that Odin is dead.
Yeah.
You know, in Thor 1, and that's why he can't come home, because Odin isn't dead. Although there is the partial truth that Odin is like in the Odin sleep, which is, you know, a bit of a, you know, it's similar to death in a way, but he wasn't dead. I mean, you know, and that's the only point. Yeah, I mean, in that film that I think he does just flat out lie.
Right.
But there's still kind of some grain of truth to it that, you know, you could almost justify as, you know, a little partial truth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of just curious to see how it all kind of stacks up in the movie series. But I'd still get the sense that what we're gonna get is I wonder if by the end of the series, you know, not to make any predictions this early in, although, you know, it's only 4 episodes to go when you think about it, they're going to bring him back to the same place he was at, more or less emotionally, in Ragnarok and at the end of Ragnarok, because, you know, Loki was actually willing to, he must have known in Endgame, right, or in Infinity War, that Thanos would have killed him.
Yeah, he essentially,
when he made his move, and he sacrificed his own life. So you've got to kind of think about what the changes that character goes through, and a lot of the Marvel stuff, I feel, has been about the people who aren't, to quote Steve Rogers, who aren't willing to make the sacrifice play, finding that arc and being willing to make the sacrifice. Tony does. Mm-hmm. Loki has. And I think there's something in that. There's like a long forming. Now, whether or not it's an accidental arc, mm-hmm, or whether the story department have actually looked at it and kind of gone, yeah, actually, there's a thing here that we can.
Oh, we can yeah.
Kind of through, I mean, you know,
you see it happen with so many characters in Infinity War and Endgame.
Natasha,
Gamora, Star-Lord, even when he's willing to shoot Gamora, you know, which is essentially, you know, like he'd probably rather kill himself.
Yeah, and I think it is about those more self-serving characters finding that wider kind of thing. And ironically, the characters that are willing to lay their lives down already don't ever get that really get that opportunity or get faced with that. You know, Steve doesn't, although we don't know where Steve is at this point. And I think there's something interesting. Also, speaking of Steve, not to take it too far off your favorite Marvel character, but speaking of Steve, why didn't the TVA go after Steve Rogers when he hopped back to see Peggy? You know,
wow,
because,
yeah. I mean, I guess maybe it was meant to happen that way.
Yeah.
It must be.
So I'd kind of like to know more about their motivations and how it's kind of decided that this is an okay thing, but this isn't, and that sort of stuff. And of course, Loki is. There's an interesting thing they keep making, a point they keep making that kind of made my ears prick up a bit, which is, you know, Renslayer says it. Loki is supposed to be self-serving and traitorous. Mm-hmm. That's his function. So, in a way, was he already upset in the timeline when you hit Infinity War? Do you know what I mean? And he sacrificed himself. Was that perhaps the instance that? I mean, yes, we know. All right, later on he grabs the Tesseract in Endgame and stuff like that. But in a way, it kind of got me thinking: had he already started upsetting the timeline? Would they have come back and brought him back to life anyway, or reset the timeline that way slightly? Because if he's supposed to fulfill a function, which is to be self-serving, to be the trickster, to be the liar, the murderer, surely the moment that he tries to kill Thanos, he becomes something different, and that's an issue.
I see what you're saying. I don't know, because, you know, like right up until the point of his death, he was still that, you know, like, you know, well, sort of chaos causing, you know, traitorous, you know. I mean, he like throughout Thor Ragnarok, he still kind of works to his own agenda.
Sure, but by the end of that, he's kind of come around and
right. I mean, but he you know, he dies somewhat heroically, but you know, I mean, he still throughout his entire life preceding that, you know, caused a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, and also you don't know that was the end of his arc, because you don't get to see his timeline. I mean, he knows he's dead, or like he's going to die at some point, but we don't know he would have stayed that way. If,
right,
you know, because remember, we're not dealing with a resurrected Loki. We're dealing with an earlier, you know, version. Loki. Yeah, Loki 1.0. You know, mm-hmm. I loved the rundown of all the different Lokis.
That's good.
And you get the great big enormous creature, like, you know, that stuff was great. And I liked his kind of insistence that every other version was inferior.
Right.
Now, you know, sorry, I'm a bit lost in this episode, because it just, there was so many great little moments, and I love the fact that he figures out in reading about Ragnarok, which actually doesn't seem to affect him that much emotionally, which is interesting.
Well, I don't know that I agree with that. When you see him reading it, you see his eyes are like welling up, and like, you know, he seems to be very affected by it. But then, afterwards, he's very irreverent toward it. But I mean, Loki, you know, he is very good at, you know, projecting what he wants to project. Like, you know, if he wants to seem irreverent toward it, he can seem that way. Because it seemed to me that while he was reading about it, he was very emotional. But in the aftermath of reading about it, did he think, well, maybe there's a way that I can find around this? You know, if I go to the timekeepers, can I prevent this from happening?
Yeah, but of course that would be a bad thing, as we discovered at the end of Ragnarok. It's got to happen, right? I mean, to stop Hela. And, you know,
But would he care? You know?
Yeah, I don't know. I think if he knew that stopping Hela would be the wrong thing, it's this fascinating concept of, well, the Loki variant is hiding in different apocalypses. Like that's great.
That was very clever, and it's totally Loki. It's like, you know, and because I mean, he was always the one who would find a way to, you know, sneak around. Like, he, you know, as we found out in Thor 1, he was the one who managed to find a way to get the frost giants into Asgard without Heimdall seeing them. He's the one who found all these like hidden ways in and out of Asgard into other realms in Thor 2. You know, he's known for all these like, you know, sort of sneaky little pathways in and out of places. And, you know, him saying, well, that's what I would do. So that must be what this Loki is doing, you know, and he figures it out.
Yeah. And I love the scene in Pompeii. That was great. Cannily, they don't let him go back to Asgard, which I think is kind of, I wonder if we'll get to that at some point. Like, I wonder if at some stage in the series they'll go back to Ragnarok. But the scene in Pompeii was very funny. I really loved that. And then we get the Roxcart shopping center, which, you know, shopping centers in fiction have this kind of weird place. You know, it's where all the zombies go in Dawn of the Dead. There's a kind of fantasy element to shopping centers in that I think everyone at some stage who grew up in any kind of urban areas imagine what it would be like to be locked in a shopping mall overnight, right? Right. Which would be ideal in Germany. When I went to Germany with Steph, I was amazed at the amount of shop. They love a shopping center in Germany. Shopping centers and department stores, they love it. They're everywhere.
They're everywhere in the US. Yeah. Everywhere. I mean, I liked the idea, you know, that it's obviously got, you know, sort of got Roxxon in the title, so you know that Roxxon owns everything in the future. And it's basically like, you know, the future like Walmart. I find this interesting. They're kind of bleeding through Roxxon. I'm trying to think where we've seen Roxxon before in the Marvel TV stuff. It was in Cloak and Dagger. Mm-hmm. It's going to feature heavily in like in Thor: Love and Thunder,
right? You
know, because we know that you know, we're going to see Dario Agger in Thor: Love and Thunder.
God. Okay, yeah. I was wondering about Dario because I've just read a really great Hulk run, you know, in the Immortal Hulk, where Dario Agger is like one of the main antagonists. That's great stuff. I hope they're going to portray him as the sort of massive
centaur.
Yeah. What is it? Is it a centaur or a minotaur or
something like that? Yeah.
It's like a giant bull, I think.
Right.
But yeah, I'm kind of keen to see where they go with Roxxon, because they're laying in all this wider universe stuff. You know, we've had Madripoor now, and to get Roxxon is kind of
it's cool. They're building. They're doing world building. You know, it's.
I found the shopping center a little bit kind of unfuturistic, though. I mean,
well, I mean,
all the products are exactly the same.
Considering that was like the point that even 50 years in the future, it's still kind of just lame and drab. You know, it's just like some things don't change.
It's all the same crap.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I liked about it. You know, I thought that was neat. Like, you know, rather than have it seem futuristic, have it just seem as boring as it is now.
And we get the different versions of, well, we get Lady Loki jumping from body to body, which was fun. I liked the kind of scrappy fight using the vacuum cleaner. I thought that was very funny. And of course, this idea that letting Loki out of their sight is a bad thing. Now, I mean, we've got to talk about the big moment, which is the reveal.
Right.
Not what I expected. Not she didn't look anything like I expected. You know, I thought she'd be a brunette for a start.
Yeah.
Now, I liked their debate. I thought that was great. But I know you've probably got some, like, give it to me. What's
all right.
At this point, just give me the lowdown on it.
So basically, I think anybody who is watching this right now, who does not want any spoilers or potential spoilers anyway, I think now is the time to switch off because...
Right. Because that's what we need, less viewers.
Well, I just don't want to spoil anything for anybody. I mean, because it is what I think is a very big plot twist to what I had been expecting and to what we got in the episode. So yeah, cover your ears, maybe hang around. We'll, give a thumbs up when it's okay to come back and not be spoiled. So I had the same feelings as you did when the reveal happened. Right. So I was like, okay, so this character, and like, we talked about it last week. I was like, okay, I am expecting Lady Loki. This is who I expect to see underneath this hood. And then she raised the hood, and
I was expecting more goth,
Well, I mean, yeah, Lady Loki has a pretty specific look. Long dark hair, and this character, was dressed the part. She was wearing, the golden green. She had the green, powers, which Loki is known for. Anytime one of the sort of possessed people throughout the shopping center traded, Loki, Lady Loki taking over their body, you would see the green, magic powers sort of ripple through them. All of that is very Loki. But there is another character of Asgardian descent who is well known for wearing gold and green and having sort of, magic powers. And that character is the Enchantress.
Okay.
And who is blonde. And has a similar power set to Loki. She's a villain. And she is the most famous Enchantress is Amora the Enchantress, who is, she's got totally different, she and Loki team up occasionally. They work together sometimes, if their ends meet. I mean, her big motivation is that she's in love with Thor. And she has, these spellcasting powers that, draw men to her in a certain, almost a Poison Ivy-esque way. Except that she controls it. Poison Ivy just kind of exudes, these pheromones that attract people to her, but the Enchantress can cause people to fall in love, and but she has many other magic powers that she tends to use for evil. So we know Amora's a character who I keep, I've been like, when are they going to introduce Amora? Because she's such a big character in the world of Thor. Right. So I've been waiting for that, but I do not think that this character is Amora. There is a second Enchantress. Okay. Very similar in in appearance to Amora, blonde hair, etc. But she has a very different backstory. So she's like a semi-recent character called Sylvie Lushton, who was introduced in Dark Reign. Which was like sort of late 2000s, I think. And during that time, basically the whole shtick with Dark Reign was that, Norman Osborn was sort of in charge of the whole Marvel universe, and all the, sort of all the teams. There was a Dark Avengers team, sort of running things instead of your, regular Avengers. And there was almost like a dark flip side version of every team in the Marvel universe. And so there was a dark version of the Young Avengers. And in a book called, it was a miniseries called Dark Reign, Young Avengers, there was this team featuring, kind of like bad guy versions of all the Young Avengers. So Sylvie was this character who, ostensibly was like a regular girl from Broxton, Oklahoma, which is where, if you've read Straczynski's Thor run, that's where all the
right.
Yeah. So all the Asgardians were, in regular person bodies, and Asgard appears over this little town in Oklahoma, and Thor goes down and ends up finding all his friends in human bodies and awakening them to their Asgardian heritage. And it's a great book. Read it. It's really, really good, the Straczynski run. And
I have a couple of volumes here. I just
right. It's really good. Yeah, it's really, really good. And a lot of the first Thor movie kind of borrows from it a little bit. But long story short, it turns out that this character, who wakes up with magic powers, believes she's Asgardian, is in fact not Asgardian, but Lady Loki just decided to mess with her and gave her magic powers and made her believe she was Asgardian, just because she felt like it.
Right.
She just thought it would be neat to, create a person, who believed themselves to be one of the awakened Asgardians, when that wasn't actually the case. But Lady Loki did bestow her with powers, and she went on to become the second Enchantress. So that is the character who, I believe we're dealing with. And it's not just me, because one of the, sort of eagle-eyed, viewers, who go on the internet and, seem to notice every little tiny thing, noticed in the, at the end of the Disney Plus shows, they have those long credit sequences.
Sure.
During which, it's like all, they give you the cast list for every language, because obviously they're going to be dubbed in every language under the sun.
Yeah.
So in every single cast credit sequence for, all the different languages, Sophia Di Martino's character was listed as just the variant, except in one, like the, like some version of like the Spanish dub, lists her name as Sylvie.
Ah, okay.
So I don't think we're actually dealing with Lady Loki at all.
Right. Of course, do you think that might be just Disney messing with you?
I think, I bet Disney loved to do stuff like that, but and have it be something that everyone's going to notice, or, at least someone's going to notice and then blab it to everyone, when it's obviously going to be a big plot twist, because it did bother me when I saw her appearance and I was like, she looks like the Enchantress. Yeah. And, I couldn't get that out of my head. Like, after I watched it, I was just like, she doesn't look like Lady Loki.
No, I just naturally assumed we'd be dealing with a more, like a dark-haired.
Right, and that's because that's what she looks like in the comics, and that's what Tom Hiddleston looks like as Loki, and it's just, it was too noticeably, like her appearance just, to me, it was like distinctively un-Loki-ish.
Okay.
And distinctively Enchantress-esque. One little thing that I noticed that has like kind of like nothing to do with anything, but that I liked is that that Marvel Studios that you get at the beginning was
green
done, green and done in the green and gold, which I like.
Didn't they do that in the first episode too?
I'm sure they did, but I noticed it in this episode.
There's a lot to think about there. Also, I've got to admire the way you throw in the phrase "long story short" after talking for 8 minutes.
Hey, I'm just saying. Do you want the backstory or?
No, I did. I'm just winding you up. If I can't look, I'm sorry.
Everything.
It is. I'm just kidding. I am just winding you up. If I cannot have an episode where I can't wind you up, Liz, it's really not worth us being on air. It's the only reason I do this. I'm thinking of renaming the show. Let's wind up Liz. No.
Okay, but okay, so this has totally spun my like Lady Loki theory on its head. Okay. So I've now got other theories. Or
go for it.
Okay.
Let's hear them.
Should we give a thumbs up? Like I think let's
Now 15 minutes later.
So new theories, Paul. Let's just see what happens next week. But my new theory has nothing to do with Lady Loki and everything to do with classic Loki, as in the Loki that we had in the comics before it's sort of pre Tom Hiddleston, really, because Tom Hiddleston the fact that everybody loved his character so much changed the character in the comics, like physically and just everything about him. I mean, for the longest time, Loki, was his appearance was, that he looked almost like an old man. He had that costume, that distinctive costume with the like sort of cowl that covers his whole head and the horns, and you never saw his hair or anything like that. And sort of the older, more evil version of Loki. So I don't think that, if this character is who I think it is, who we just discussed, I think that person is not, not pulling the strings. I think that another version of Loki is. And okay, I think, and we know that Richard E. Grant is going to have a big role in this series, and no one has named who his character is. If you go to IMDb, there is no, there's no credit for who he's going to play.
Of course, he could also be playing one of the Timekeepers.
That's possible, absolutely.
Or all three of the Timekeepers,
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. Right. Fascinating. Okay.
Right.
That is.
So if the variant they're chasing is a Loki, then and she is in fact who I think she is, then she's not the one who is actually in control.
Right. And I mean, I've just got to take a minute to talk. We're going to wrap up soon, but I've got to take a minute to talk about the sort of end game of hers, which was to kind of throw the to set off bombs. Bombs,
the reset charge. Reset charges, which is what the TVA have been using, and whenever they go to a point in time and they want to, sort of basically cover up their actions, they leave these reset charges, and she's been stealing them and dropping them along the timeline.
Yeah. Now I am really interested to see because the thing is, there is this kind of thing in Marvel where they'll set something up to be this huge thing, and then they don't, it kind of fizzles out and nothing. You never really hear from it. I would actually like to see the ramifications of what's just happened now, because that's kind of cool and badass. Like what she did was kind of very, there are times when you've got to really admire the bad guys because they're bad guys and because
and they're good at it.
Yeah. And I'm just really curious to see where this goes, because we're told that the once we hit the red line, there'll be no way to retrieve the timeline. And of course, we know we've got Multiverse of Madness coming. We know that, or we assume that Spider-Man No Way Home is going to deal with some multiversal stuff. That there's a fascinating kind of arena now opened for us of where this could go.
Right. If they choose to use this as, the creation of a multiverse, it's like, great. It makes perfect sense that like that would happen in a Loki series as well, because, he is the god of chaos and,
I'm waiting for the first. I'm waiting for the first, because we obviously we didn't get it in Falcon and Winter Soldier, but I'm waiting for the first. This is where the mutants come in. theory. Wow. I haven't seen it yet. I've got to say, speaking of theories and fan reaction, this episode was entirely ruined for me.
Really?
Not entirely, but by the trending topics on Twitter, because they very specifically used a term, shall we say, that spoiled the episode. And it was just like, you know, if it had just said, you know, big twists in Loki or anything else.
What was it?
It was just like, it was just hashtag Lady Loki straight. And it was just like, look, come on, like, there's got to be some little person beavering away at the algorithm there, monitoring what's going on. You should have a bit of bloody common sense. So literally, I switched on Twitter.
I think the point, you know, is just don't switch on Twitter until after you watch the episode.
Well, unfortunately, running a business that relies on getting the word out there about the things I'm doing, sadly, I do have to switch on Twitter. I think I am going to have to, you know, mute certain words for a little while, but I don't want to lose touch with the audience, you know, with any engagement and stuff. So a bit annoyed with Twitter there, but what can you do? I guess we're gonna get this every Wednesday, really. Really enjoyed this episode. Did you notice that Sasha Lane, who plays
C20,
yes, she appeared in the Hellboy movie from year before last, 2019, was it?
Oh, okay.
The sadly not very good Hellboy movie.
Yeah,
it's a bit of a disappointment, really. But yeah, she pops up in that. English actress. I believe she's done some stuff for Ling Ramsey as well. But I was quite I've seen her before. A lot of fun this episode. Ultimately, I enjoyed it. Obviously, you're there.
Oh yeah, my brain is like whirring, like, you know.
I'm really pleased though, because obviously one of the great advantages of having you on is having someone who kind of has this knowledge of the Marvel universe, which I do not have. So it's great having
it's all theories at this point, but you know, I feel like at this point I've at least got some ideas about where we might go from here. But you know, I mean, there's still so much about this show that it's like, you know, I have no idea what to expect.
Potentially, though, I was talking about this with a friend on Wednesday, funnily enough, when I went up to get my comics, stopped for a coffee with a pal, and just, you know, we were talking about, are the shows at risk of becoming a victim of hype? Because there is so much potential for the storylines that people seem to want, and invariably you don't really get it. You don't really get a whole hell of a lot of it at all, really.
What do you mean?
Well, in terms of, I want this to happen, we want this to happen, we want that to happen. Then it's something completely different. I mean, and it is a testament to the fact that the writers are kind of on the ball. And
it's like the whole, like, you know, where's Mephisto thing.
Do you wonder, though, if there are certain plot points where they film 3 or 4 different versions or more?
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. You know, that wouldn't surprise me. But at the same time, it's like, I think, you know, going into them, you have to not lower your expectations, but like adjust them to, you know, with the knowledge that basically, even though something like, you know, like something like the resetting of the timeline, you know, the creation of the multiverse, that could possibly happen here. But the shows, you know, as they've said, are designed to be, you know, watched as like, you know, sort of an accompaniment to the films, but not something that you have to watch to be able to watch the films. So they're never going to do anything so radical that you would need to watch the show and, you know, in order to watch the films.
I had this debate with David Anderson, who is the host of a show that Creative Differences, I believe it's called, which is on YouTube now. You guys can check it out. We had a bit of a debate because he was saying, you know, I don't have Disney Plus, but now I'm told that I've got to watch this show and I've got to watch that. And I was just like, you don't have to watch any of it. Ultimately, the choice is still with the viewer to choose to watch or not to watch.
Right. And they've gone and said, like, these are meant to, to enhance the experience of watching the films, but you don't need to watch them to watch the films. Whereas, like, some of the Marvel movies, it's like, yeah, you definitely would benefit from having watched previous films in order to watch them. You wouldn't want to watch Infinity War or Endgame without having seen the films that come before it, or at least the key films that come before it.
Sure. And I think, there is I'll be interested to see the first movie that springs out of the events in the shows, if any. Like, I'll be interested to see what Multiverse of Madness is going to be like, or Spider-Man No Way Home, or Eternals. Like, I'm not sure they're going to tie many of those in, but I'll be very keen to see. Speaking of things that kind of got laid in the shows, I don't know if you know that it was late 2019 to early 2020, they were due to do a Darkhold event series in Marvel, where the Darkhold has been missing for years, and Doom finds it. And that just disappeared from the shelves, the solicits. It just, well, not the shelves, but disappeared from the solicits. And it was thought, oh yeah, actually they're not going to do this now, but it is starting up in September, I believe. They're finally kind of getting out there.
Gee, I wonder why. It's like, obviously this is meant to tie in, or I would think, that they would have only delayed it in order to bring it closer to, like, Doctor Strange or one of the other films.
Well, with the impending death of Doctor Strange in the comics, or what seems to be the death of Doctor Strange, and the Darkhold series, the rumor is that they're setting up the Scarlet Witch to be the new Sorcerer Supreme. So,
right, okay.
Maybe
I mean, right. It's like, where we leave Wanda at the end of WandaVision, she's got the Darkhold. And surely, when she does appear in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, that's going to play some sort of role. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I'm keen to see. Obviously, I don't like. I've got to admit, I do not buy Marvel events. In fact, I don't really buy comics events at all if I can avoid it. I tend to get them in trade. I don't do the single issue thing just because it's gotten way too expensive. And I feel that there's a kind of I don't know what the word is really. It's a bit of a money grab going on when events come along. King in Black being a perfectly good case in point, which I think is only now just coming to an end in the last last month or two. But I do like getting a kind of good.
A good event book is, is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Not all of them are, are great, but I would say, when they're good, it's a lot of fun.
I mean, you got to wonder if you do the multiverse thing in Phase 4, would Phase 5 be resetting it using something like Hickman's version of Secret Wars? Because that was a giant universe reset that apparently built up all throughout his Avengers run and his Fantastic Four and live video, folks.
I usually put it on silent. Sorry.
You should have taken it. It might have been something important, Liz.
No, it was definitely looked like spam. Thanks, telemarketers.
Oh, really? Because I'd love to know if you've got PPI.
Me too.
They could have been gripping. Anyway, I think that's where we wrap up. That's probably a good sign that we should be going now. Thank you so much for watching. Please do check out the Patreon. Please do check out the web store. There's still a sale on in the web store just because I can't be bothered to shut it all down. But yeah, take a look at the web store. Do take a look at the rest of the shows we've got here on YouTube. We'll be back with Crushing Comics in 4 more weeks. We might do some little comics reviews somewhere in between that just to keep the fires burning, as it were. probably on Friday or Saturday, I'm going to be dropping the episode finally on Army of the Dead and A Quiet Place Part 2, which Nikki and I talked about a few weeks back. I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but I think I'm going to put it up. And obviously do take a look at the first episode of this show and all our Marvel after shows. Retrospectively, it might be interesting for you to see what we were right about and what wrong about.
I was right about everything.
But distinctly you weren't. I can literally prove that with empirical evidence. Don't
know what you're talking about.
Well, no, one of us doesn't. But yeah, you could well be right about this stuff, Liz. We'll wait and see. I'll take great pleasure in telling you were wrong. Considering I started the episode with saying, Liz, you had it spot on. You were right.
But yeah. Well, sort of. I was sort of right. But sort of wrong.
Well, very wrong now, I would say. As always, Liz, it's been, a moderate pleasure. Thanks for dropping by. Do give your pal there a call back and tell them thanks for making their cameo as well. We'll catch you next time on The Crush. Follow us at The Comic Crush. All the details are in the thing below. Leave a comment, guys. Tell us what you thought of the show, this week's episode. Tell us what you think of Loki. I do just have to address the fact there is Peter, who has dropped a few comments before. Don't think he was really enjoying Loki either, as I recall. Which is a shame, Peter. I feel really bad that you're not kind of getting as much. I mean, not that bad. I don't make them, but out as much of the Marvel shows as perhaps we are. Some of them have been hit and miss, I think, on individual episodes, but overall, I've enjoyed the experience so far. But yeah, I think. Try something else. I know you said you were enjoying Invincible. I certainly enjoyed that. I'm sorry. It wasn't this show. It was Jupiter's Legacy that Peter wasn't enjoying. I do apologize. Yeah, I do recall that. Not one of us. But do give us a shout, Peter, if you're watching this and you're enjoying it or you're not enjoying it. Let us know. Just let us know. Guys, drop us a comment. Let us know how you're doing. We'd love to hear from you. We do try and answer all the comments, so do drop us a message in there. Goodbye. Catch you next time on The Crush.
Bye.
Bye.